What is the difference between outbound and inbound B2B marketing? We're going to talk about that right now, along with the pros and cons of each. So let's start here by defining the difference between outbound marketing and inbound marketing. Outbound marketing is comprised of strategies and tactics where you directly initiate the contact with the prospect. So it's you initiating contact with whoever your ideal target client is. Inbound marketing is comprised of strategies and tactics that help your prospects to find you and to contact you from their end when they want to. It's essentially initiated by them, whereas outbound is initiated by you. So let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons around inbound marketing. The pros are that decision makers find you, which means that there's a lower barrier and less friction because, again, it was initiated by them. It scales easily, especially given that we now have AI to help create mountains and mountains of content, which means more people are able to find you because of tools like LinkedIn, YouTube, etc. And inbound builds long-term visibility and authority, really important in the world of answer engine optimization, generative engine optimization, when these AI tools are intercepting anywhere from 30 to 40% of the search traffic out there and giving answers to decision makers directly. So inbound, good for all of these reasons. Of course, there's the other side of the coin, so let's look at the cons. One is that inbound marketing is really slow to get it working. It can take years of being focused on search engine optimization or years to build the right audience on a platform like YouTube or Instagram. And I put slow here. I probably should have put the word hard to keep results. Platforms like LinkedIn and X and YouTube and all of these other platforms out there, Google algorithms, are constantly changing. I've seen people go from having tons and tons of web traffic to losing it virtually overnight because of an algorithm change or because they made a change to their website. So that can be time consuming, it can be expensive, and if you ever just need to have pedal to the metal on getting cash flow into your business, that is not going to happen with inbound marketing. Another downside to inbound marketing is that you get very little feedback. If what you're producing isn't working, you don't know if it's a messaging problem, you don't know if it's a target market problem, or if it's just simply an algorithm problem that you don't necessarily know how to game that social media platform or that Google algorithm in order to get folks coming to you. You're not getting body language, it's not a dialogue that you're having with decision makers, it's just you speaking at the marketplace, hoping that it's landing, hoping that it's making its way through. You don't even know if it is getting through, let alone if the decision makers are responding positively or negatively to whatever your company is putting out. And most of all, being focused on inbound marketing can crowd out the very real work of talking to decision makers every single week. If the idea of publishing content is at the top of the to-do list, instead of looking at your professional network and the connections that you have in order to get conversations with real decision makers booked, if that's getting crowded out for the sake of publishing content, you're going to have a real problem in your coaching, consulting, or services business because content is very easy to hide behind, but you have a zero feedback loop to know why it's not working, if it's not working. Let's change gears now and look at outbound marketing and the pros and cons around this. Some of the pros of outbound marketing is that it's a direct path. You choose the decision makers that you approach. And if you watch my other video on how to segment the B2B market, then you know already this is how you can focus on who you're targeting, and now you can identify exactly who those decision makers are and reach out to them and connect with them and focus on them specifically. It is the shortest route to creating conversations that create cash flow and discovery, in terms of discovering exactly what your target decision makers are prioritizing right now, where they need help, and where you can bring your expertise to bear. And you get immediate high quality feedback that sharpens your messaging fast. So it is a continuous feedback loop when you are doing any type of outbound marketing and business development. So now let's look at the cons. The first con is that it requires more emotional effort. When you are doing outbound outreach, there is going to be an element of rejection, sometimes not directly, but just the silence that comes back can be deafening, or certainly feel deafening. You're more vulnerable and visible in what you're doing, and it does take a lot of proactivity. You have to be motivated every week to do outbound outreach. Another con is that outbound is not instantly scalable. It really depends on your effort and your team. And another downside is if you don't have it depend on you and your team, and you try to take one of the workarounds of these AI tools, for example, that are just doing mass outreach that's going on, decision makers are getting really fed up with that. You can tell immediately that an email is being generated by AI. It's often sort of pulling in facts about people into the email. It almost feels, I got one of these emails the other day, it felt a bit creepy because this AI tool had gone back almost 20 years in my life to pull in factoids. It didn't make me feel more seen or that this company put in extra effort, because I knew immediately that an AI tool did that. Instead, it just felt very manipulative, as though going back 20 years in my LinkedIn profile and pulling in facts to a cold outreach email was somehow going to impress me. It did not. It, more than anything, creeped me out. So it's not immediately scalable. If it's done well, it really does have to be custom from you. And last but not least, it needs strong operational discipline in terms of tracking contact information, knowing who and when you reached out to at that organization last. So it's a bit more laborious, and you do have to be very disciplined when you are doing outbound. So I want to make another point about outbound, and that is that outbound marketing doesn't always have to be cold. In fact, most consultants, coaches, and professional service providers that we're working with are actually sitting on a mountain of professional connections that they've built over 5, 10, 15, 25 years. People who already know, like, and trust them, who would actually be pretty primed to work with them if only they better understood what those experts did and engaged with them in more meaningful ways on a more regular basis. And I think it's really important to understand that, because if you go speak at a conference, or you're a speaker on a webinar, or you have connections through an industry or professional association that you are a member of, if you reach out to those people in your professional Rolodex, that still counts as outbound. And in fact, you're going to have much greater success by starting with visibility in places like speaking and webinars, and then moving that to one-to-one conversations, which does require an element of outbound. What I'm really not a fan of for individuals is focusing purely on cold outbound prospecting, because most decision makers will immediately put up a hard no or just simply delete the email. So the conversion of cold prospecting is very, very low, but the conversion of outbound, high integrity outreach to decision makers that you've already got some high quality visibility in front of is exponentially higher. than anything else that you can do. And it's one of the things that we teach our Bold House clients to do, is actually engineer those conversations in a way that it's a win for the decision maker and a win for the expert. Even if a sale doesn't happen, it's still a win that's going to create more yes opportunities through more referrals and more business down the road. And that's one of the most important things that you can learn how to do in your business, is really create conversations with decision makers from a really high integrity place, even when they're not looking to make a buying decision right now, and position yourself to be the expert that they go to when they are ready to make a buying decision. And that really changes everything in your business. Okay, so that's a look at inbound versus outbound marketing and the pros and cons of each. Ultimately, you want to make sure that your strategy has a healthy mix of both of those things, and that the biggest focus is on creating conversations with real decision makers even before they're ready to buy the types of services or expertise that you offer. I want to take this conversation a little deeper now, and for that, we're going to transition now over to another video that I created for you called How to Get Big Corporate Clients. We're going to go a little bit more granular in some of the strategies that you want to be employing as you build your expert-based firm. So check out that link below, and then I will see you there.